And so much of it is made up of the comments of members of the congregation that you really don't have access to ordinarily. It's really a resource. So I'm going to stop. If there are questions, I want to try to deal with those. And you're going to do a little switch off. Yeah.
I am now modeling a proposal that since there are several people who can't be here and we're video recording it to be able to post it so that everyone can see the presentation and whatever questions, please come up here to ask a question or to introduce an idea so that everyone can see and hear you as you do it. Thank you.
Okay. Who wants to come be first? Please, please.
I just have a very quick question. We came here after this all got started, my husband, my family and I. When you say it was 50-some responses, can you put that in the context of the membership numbers? I mean, it sounds small, but is that because they represent households or individuals?
Some will represent households, usually couples. And I did not distinguish, as I had the face-to-face conversations. I think we had, 30 of those and about 40-something people in that. So I don't know on the handwritten or the SurveyMonkey whether those were individuals or couples. In terms of where did you come out in relation to your membership, you came out pretty well. And I really appreciate the many people who took time and energy. Obviously, if you didn't do it, you probably didn't realize it was as long, or almost all of the questions had no response. And my guess is that's because somebody or a couple of people may have just gone through, looked at all the questions, and decided, I'm not going to spend the time doing all those. But I think in terms of having the 50, that was a good number. It's good feedback. Yes.
I was interested in the demographics that you have of this neighborhood, particularly the age groups and the income groups and the educational background of this neighborhood. I'm terribly interested in that. Is there any data that you can add to that or share with us which allows us to see how that picture of our zip code is relating to religious institutions, which in Berkeley is not the biggest thing to do, I think, because I think that might make a difference. If you're expecting a rich person up on the hill who has a $10 million house to come down here to this thing, what are their relationships, this large group of people?
I will have to do some more study on that, Charlie, because the sources I use don't include anything about religion, unfortunately. And I've done a little work on that, but I will take a look and see if I can find
I'd like to add a related demography question, and that is, when we're talking about the zip code, we're talking about resources that are potentially available because of area, but how many people in this room live in this zip code, or even in Berkeley, or even, I mean, do we know how that's, because you're actually talking to people who don't necessarily have anything to do with the statistics that you're asking for comparison's sake. So I'm wondering how that relates, since we're the group.
I lifted those intentionally from the missional standpoint. This is the place where you happen to be located, even though the majority of folks don't live in the same zip area. It's still the primary arena for your missional life. And I didn't want to get too complicated. I did start to ask Linda, what are the predominant zip areas of the congregation? but started to figure, how do I manage all that if she gives it to me? Because the numbers would be so different. And the two sources that I use, one works entirely off of census figures. The other is for the real estate business, and they've got a lot of helpful demographic stuff as well, and a lot of stuff I don't need because of that. Yes, sir.
So, you know me, I've got to throw my 2 cents in. I will just say I went through a similar exercise. It was about 10 years ago, but it was part of an online United Methodist course in welcoming, where I participated with people from all over the country in reviewing these principles. And one of the exercises that we did is the one that you were engaged in. And I think that one of the things that, of course, that data was older, but I think based on the stability in this community or in this immediate area, they still might apply. And I think one of the senses that I came out with was the fact that it is important from a mission sense to understand where we live and where we locate. We come from all over, but it's not, and we come over to participate in the wonderful things that happen here, but it's more than a sense that we just coincidentally happen to meet here on Sunday. I mean, we are part of this community, and there's a tremendous, there's a way of thinking that says, how can we minister to people that don't have any needs? The notion, the fact that because people here have money, or because they have a home that they bought for $200,000 that's now worth $1.2 million, that they are not needy, either spiritually or whatever, or that they don't have resources available that are just ready to be directed and that we can lead in that. And so I would just say one facet of this from our standpoint of mission, although we care about many things and many types of people and many causes, the fact that we're here is significant. And it's important to understand that is something that goes into the calculation of what we can draw on and what we can give.
Thank you. You know, well, a couple of questions. Who in Berkeley doesn't know about Epworth United Methodist Church? And why don't they know? Yeah, you're not going to meet everybody's needs, certainly, but there are a lot of people who have the needs spiritually or relationally that would thrive in this congregation if they knew about it. So it's an opportunity. So yes.
I wanted to make a quick comment. I'm a member here now, but I first entered this building as a scout mom years and years ago. And it's a thriving troop that comes here. And it's just a reminder that for many of you that are here on Sunday morning, through the week, this is a really thriving place for the community. And I know that was brought up, but many of these scout families come from all over as well. They don't necessarily live anywhere close to this area code. I happen to know that personally. And so you're the public face. And this space is really important, and it's really valued by that community. I know you see them on work days, but it's just a reminder, and I think the Epworth, the youth program as well for children, the playgroups, has brought many, many families through these doors that would have never walked through a church. Although scouting has some roots biblically, many of these families walk this faith spectrum to no faith. And so you're also the public face of a church that they wouldn't walk into otherwise. So it is very valued by the Cub Scout troop that meets here. And I think you've been the home for quite a while here. So thank you for that. And just a reminder that, yeah, you were the public face of Christianity to many, many people who wouldn't walk into a church otherwise.
Yeah, thank you. Yes,
I was just thinking that we are very accustomed to think about how can we have ministries that advantage people who are poor or needy, but we can have a ministry to people who have too much money. And there are a lot of people who have too much money and don't know what to do with it. And I think that's, and a capital campaign is a wonderful opportunity to say, for us to look at, first of all, ourselves. It's very popular to talk poor. You know, say, everything's so expensive. But we're a pretty privileged group here. And everybody said, no, not me. Just, I think so. I think so. And we live in a very privileged community. And perhaps a capital campaign is an opportunity for us to think about ourselves and then maybe offer to somebody else who might be down the street and really hasn't thought about what to do with their wealth, that we could help them too.
yep, thank you.
And especially if we're about to move in the direction of voting on something, I have to introduce a dilemma, and that is this study has sounded a lot like a case for a capital campaign, and I'm wondering if you were to look at the data, what we haven't heard yet is, based on your experience, where are your biggest areas of concern? I mean, dust, gotta laugh, but there are some, I wonder, based on how you've seen this go before, where are we ill-positioned to make this choice? Because if we bring that forward in a group that's used to being social activists, the trust involved in the process goes way up, and in my experience, the chance of it succeeding goes way up if you put the dilemmas right in front of people and let them have that be a part of the process rather than just the case to be made for moving forward. That's an adoption issue, I think, and I really would like to hear more about that.
Yeah, that's part of what I was aiming at in looking at some of the ramifications. If you do vote for a capital campaign, you're saying, yes, I'm willing to do this spiritual thing. It's not just about money. One of the difficulties always is what happens if we do this great effort and instead of raising $350,000, we raise $150,000. That's why I've tried to look at so many different categories. We don't have any assurance about where we will come out, but the recognition is that in many ways this is a very blessed congregation. And yes, you're located in a zip area where there is a sizable wealth. And rich people have spiritual needs too. Or so I've been told, you know. I think that's always the biggest drawback for me, is wanting to be able to make financial projections that are reliable, but are also a stretch. And I hope I haven't stretched too far, but I think this congregation is exhibiting behaviors that point positively toward the possibility of a good, exciting, sound outcome. It's a life-changing outcome, both for individuals and families who make decisions. What is it for us as a family to make a sacrificial commitment for 3 years? How do we do that? Does that mean we don't go out to eat as much as we did. We live with our cars for another 3 years. You know, every family's budget is going to be different, but those are the kinds of issues that I never know the answer to. But the statistics point to positive possibilities for you. And, you know, those for me are some of the oh my goodness, what are we doing kinds of questions.
Hi, I was wondering when the capital campaign will start, when it will be completed, when the construction would start, when it would be completed. And looking at being here for a very long time, I'm just wondering how long, on average, or people in different age categories could expect to have the benefit of these capital improvements. Okay? Because it is a matter of standard of
Yeah.
worship, you know,
Yeah,
and
the longevity in this zip is 105. So I expect a good many of you are going to be moving back to this zip. No. Assuming that the vote is positive to move ahead, we're prepared to begin with the leadership team for a campaign on Tuesday night of this week. A lot of what happens in the first interval of a couple of months is kind of behind the scenes, with some exceptions. We will have to get the building committee up and running pretty quickly, so some of the information that we need will be dependent on how quickly they can bring it to us. And I realize that there's a real short time frame. As Linda and I have put calendar together, we would go public in early October with Gratitude Sunday, and complete the Sunday with Commitment Sunday, the Sunday before Thanksgiving. So we're talking about the late mid-November. And I think our first Fruit Sunday, when we would invite everybody to make their first gift to fulfill their commitment, whether it's a one-time gift or a 3-year gift, whatever the time frame is for them, that we'd begin that the first of the year, as I recall. I'll have to go back and look. But yeah, all the calendar will become much more visible, although the work of the leadership team is pretty much behind the scenes initially. Okay, I'll quit there. I'm very grateful to you all for staying. I know you found these chairs unusually comfortable. And I will stick around, but assuming that the church conference will vote positively, we'll go from there.
Well, first of all, join me in thanking Sam for all the hours, the valuable information you've already given to us. I can tell you, I have never met someone who listens so well and patiently.
My wife says the same thing.
She chose well. So thank you so much, Stanford. Thank you for staying here, friends. We can do this briefly if you are of one mind. So we're now moving into an official church conference authorized by our superintendent in order to consider whether we want to move forward with a capital campaign. It's a one-item agenda, and I've been charged with officiating. So I am here to entertain a motion, some motion. Is Shan still here? Are you taking notes? Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for our secretary here. Did you catch that, Shan? Yes. Okay. That's right. We have been very moved over here. Is there any further discussion or questions?
Would be to say that the building committee has been functioning for quite a long
Yes.
time and is active and engaged and ready to move forward over a couple of years, you know, in action. So I just want to put that out so that's all.
Yes, we have preliminary plans that are now, will soon go to contractors, but we're perfecting that, the detail in those. John and then Charlie?
I just want to say that for me personally, I consider this to be a real commitment and a commitment to a new way of looking at spiritual journey. And as I was sitting there, I was debating with myself my fears about financial insecurity and all of that. And I've decided that for myself it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, John. Charlie? And if you speak loudly, because we're trying to videotape, so Charlie, if you would come up here maybe. Yeah, I'm sorry. So, yeah, if you would come up here.
I'd just like to make a request because I forget things. I forget that there is a group of committee, and I don't know. I say, I see you on Sunday morning, but oh, you're one of the ones on the building committee, or you're one of the ones on the trustees, or you're one of the ones. I don't remember that kind of thing, and I'm wondering if it's not possible as we move forward in this, assuming we're going to move forward in this, to identify and continue to identify people like maybe you were building committee on your name tag. Because that helps
That's a good
me,
idea.
remind me to talk to you about that, because I meant to say that, but Sunday I was having something else doing.
Thank you, Charlie. I think that communication will be critical and visibility will be critical. And to kind of reiterate what Diane said, our building committee has been working very diligently on plans and getting some cost estimates. We have some general numbers. Well, yes. Judy Cayo, our chairperson, is in Nicaragua, but if you are on building committee, if you would stand. Yeah. Yes. And, yes. So Jean Olson, Christina Kellogg, Diane Rush Woods. Are you Clark as well? Clark Kellogg and Paul Nassman. And it's chaired by Judy Cayo. Who else is not here that I'm missing? Yes, Sarah Oakes. Yes, thank you. All right. Yes, Barbara?
I think it would be helpful if
Or I can repeat the,
yeah, I just think it would be helpful if the building committees, the names were written on something.
so,
Every week, so we know through the process who's there.
yes, so we can write the names of the building committee on publications and articles around the project, yes, or projects. You're going to move it now?
And when we have a long period of sitting and if we do this quickly, we can leave positive vote. I feel uncomfortable. I don't feel uncomfortable with the principle of moving forward. The process seems to me forced. So
Okay.
if we don't vote yes now, what would happen next? Nothing. We would just have to do this again later and reconsider it, right? Which is another big commitment of time. I don't want to do that. But if somebody has questions and
you.
they feel uncomfortable about voting to move it forward, how would they get those issues addressed? What would happen next? For someone who goes, oh, I don't know about it, would they ask a member of the building committee? How does it officially get introduced into the process?
So I think the building committee will be listening. If we move forward, the capital campaign leadership will be listening. Our trustees will be listening. I think those are the ways that those concerns can be raised. But you're right, Brandon, we don't want to rush anything. There is, you're right, a presumption of moving forward, but we need to listen, as well as Sanford has in some of these interviews, to what our concerns are, what our hopes and dreams are. Jean can.
I have one question, and that is the fact that I counted a while ago, and I came up with 40 people here, at least some of them were here and have left. But is that a fair enough number of the population of this church to, for us to make this decision?
So Jean asked that there were about 40 people before some folks had to leave who were present, and is that a big enough percentage of the congregation in order to make this decision? So technically, you can figure out what you think your opinion is, but technically in the United Methodist Church, we only need a charge conference, which is the officers of the church, leadership of committees of the church, to make such a decision. That was what the district, I asked for a church conference, but my letter of authorizing this conference actually said a charge conference, but the pastor can make a difference. Charge conference is the current leadership. Church conference is all members and clergy related to the church. Clergy for whom this is their church conference. And I called for a church conference, which means all members and related clergy can vote. So technically we can. This is an official church conference.
Charge conference.
Well, it is a church conference because I asked for a church conference and they said charge conference. But I advertised it as a church conference, which means every person who is a member or clergy related to the church may vote. And you have to, Jean, advertise that at least 10 days in advance, and at least 2 ways, media, of getting that word out so that everyone knows they have an option to express their opinion and their vote.
So may I interpret your comment in answer to Jean's question that yes?
Technically, we have the authority. Whether you feel comfortable making that decision with this group, size group, that's a different question. But yes, technically, we have the authority to do that.
If this group says yes, how far does that authority go? When's the next decision making? Or are we just good to go for the next 3 years?
The charge conference, the vote is to move forward with the capital campaign. We will be making other decisions about the building. Now, whether that requires a church or charge conference, I don't know. Sanford would be better than that, better prepared to answer that question. But we will, whether it is in a church conference or charge conference or a church council, people will be informed and have avenues to express their opinions all along the way. Is that fair, Sam?
I think you're required at least to have a charge conference before you sign a contract on the
okay.
of the magnitude.
So what I'm hearing you saying is after the capital campaign moves through, we would have to have another conference, charge or church being one of the two, to actually have a full vote before we authorize building to start. Construction to start. Okay.
Construction, and part of what the building committee will have to bring back is this is the plan for
Correct.
the space, and this is the plan for financing it.
The
Right.
building committee brings back the plan for the space and the plan for the financing, and then that gets voted on by the group, by the community.
It's also reviewed, although it's not required for the nature of the size of our project, but it will likely be reviewed by our district location and building committee as well. And so we'll get input there, although
Thank you.
it doesn't really reach the 25% value of our facilities test, but we will likely do that anyway. Any other comments?
So you don't have the district superintendent's consent to have a church conference?
Well, we have I did get authorization. It did say charge conference. So if you want to be technical, yes, Tom, the letter says charge conference. But for every charge or church conference, the pastor has the authority to ask for it to be a church conference. And when I called the district office, I asked for a church conference. So if you would like to technically go to a charge conference, we can do that. But I just think it allows for more voice to do the church conference. Your thoughts?
Well, I thought that the discipline said that a church conference can be convened in place of a charge conference.
That's correct.
But it takes the district superintendent to authorize a church conference.
Yes, at the request of the pastor is usually how that's done. Yes. So,
If I understand it, though, you can take a church conference and expand it to a church conference. You can't take a church conference and condense it to a church conference.
that's correct. That's correct.
So we're taking a church conference, the official authorization, and expanding it to a church conference, which is completely acceptable.
Well, I mean, we're splitting some hairs here.
I just have a comment with regard to the building committee.
Okay. So Paul has a building committee comment.
Judy, who's the chair of the building committees in Nicaragua, Annette, who's a very strong voice on the trustees, is also in Nicaragua, so they're not really here to speak for the functions of those groups. But I would like to clarify a couple of things. Visual presentations of the architectural concepts have been made. I made one to the church council. Judy made one to another group several months ago. What we are waiting on at this time is the rendering of some initial architectural drawings that will allow us to get concrete cost estimates on what it would take to actually do some of the things that were presented in these concepts. The committee made the decision not to spend a lot of money on elaborate, fancy architectural drawings. It was felt that the PowerPoint type of conceptual presentations that were made were a cost-effective way to talk about the vision or the outcome of the visioning process that the committee went through with the architect. I think one of the key things here is there's been a long passage of time between those presentations and the delivery of the initial architectural plans. And I think that has allowed those concepts to kind of dissipate. And I think one of the things that probably comes from this meeting is perhaps the necessity to back up and re-present some of the concepts and the renderings that we do have. The other thing is that there's a lot of discussion about the building committee approving things. My understanding, and I can go back to the initial concept here, is that the building committee recommends to the church council and to the board of trustees, and the decisions are made by those bodies. So while the building committee is a group that has engaged in a creative process, has dealt initially with people with the knowledge of that comes